The question here is, can James Wan do a better sequel than his own original film? You guys will find out the answer to that in this review. Anyway, guys, what's going on? It's Autobot Mike 18 here with another movie review, guys. In this video, I will be reviewing James Wan's second horror film to come out this year, Insidious Chapter 2. Now, Insidious Chapter 2, guys, is the sequel to the 2011 hit horror thriller film Insidious. Now, guys, let's talk about the first Insidious for a second. Let me put that poster down. I got to talk about this movie. There's a lot of good things to say about the first Insidious, guys. I loved the first Insidious. It has to go down. This film will definitely go down as one of the scariest films I've ever seen in my life. I was genuinely scared in this movie. There were no, over-the-top jump scares. The scares in this movie were real. They were genuine. I loved them. I literally jumped in this movie several times. I loved the first Insidious. It was excellent. The story itself was creative and original, and the music probably had to be one of the best things as well. They played the music at just the right time, at just the right scare, I have nothing but good things to say about the first Insidious. And a lot of people saw this movie in 2011. I saw it when it came out. I saw it a couple weeks ago for the first time. I watched it on my portable Blu-ray player with my headphones in, and it scared the crap out of me. I loved this movie. Excellent horror film from James Wan. And James Wan really is a good director. He really does know how to do a good horror film. He's done Saw, the first Insidious. He just directed The Conjuring, which came out earlier this year, and now he's doing Insidious Chapter 2. And as I said, he's back for this film. He's directing yet again, and we have most of our cast members from the first Insidious back. We have Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne, and I was really looking forward to Chapter 2, guys, especially after I watched this. I mean, I really was. So the big question here, guys, is Chapter 2 better than the first Insidious? Well, I didn't think it would be. I thought that it would be good, but not as good, and I was right. Insidious Chapter 2 was a good horror film. It was fun. I enjoyed it. Was it better than the first one? No, it wasn't. But don't get me wrong. It was still a good movie. There were still a lot of things. There were a lot of good things going for this movie, and I have a lot of good things to say about it. So, guys, let's get into the actual review for Insidious Chapter 2. The first thing I'm going to start talking about is a sort of brief plot summary for Chapter 2. Now, let me just warn you guys, if you've never seen this, don't watch this review, because I will spoil the end of the first Insidious right in this review, so I just want to warn you guys about that. If you haven't seen the first Insidious, don't watch this review, because I'm going to spoil the end of this film right now, actually. And also, if you've never seen the first Insidious, don't go see Chapter 2 yet, because you'll be completely lost. You honestly will. You gotta see the first one before you go see Part 2. But anyway, guys, I just wanted to mention that I will not be spoiling Chapter 2 in this video, but I will be spoiling the first Insidious. So anyway, guys, as we all know from the first Insidious, we had the very nice family they were in the new house. They moved into the new house. We had Patrick Wilson playing the father and Rose Byrne playing the mother. They were being haunted by those, paranormal entities, these random entities that showed up, out of nowhere. And, they were haunting them, and they had to call for help, and their son was trapped in, this spirit world, a part of his form was trapped in, this spirit world known as the Further. And the end of the first Insidious, Patrick Wilson goes into that world, he rescues his son, he brings him back into the human world. At the very end of that movie, the older female investigator, that girl named Elise, she was strangled by Patrick Wilson's character, and that's how they ended the first Insidious. So that leads us to believe that bride entity followed him into the human world. So now we have Chapter 2 beginning, and Chapter 2 is literally set a day or two after the events of the first Insidious, and that surprised me. I thought it was set a year or two later, but it wasn't. It's set a day or two later after the first Insidious. So Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne, they have their kids. They're trying to get over this haunting. They're trying to forget about it. And Rose Byrne especially, she still feels that, something's wrong, something is not right. She still feels that they're still being haunted, and she is right. Weird things start happening yet again. They're staying in Patrick Wilson's mother's house in this movie, and she's starting to get freaked out. You got all these weird things starting to happen, and she also begins to suspect that Patrick Wilson is responsible for some of the things that are going on, because he's not acting himself, and as we all know, with the way the first movie ended, he is probably possessed, or that bride followed him into the real human world. So something's going on with his character, and that's all I'm going to say about Insidious Chapter 2, guys. That's basically the whole plot summary. Now, the thing that I really liked about Insidious Chapter 2 was how much this movie tied into the original Insidious. I think the story writing was a lot better for Chapter 2 than it was for the first Insidious, in my opinion. They definitely did a better job with the story, and I love all the connections that were made between the first Insidious and this movie. You know, the story had a much deeper meaning to it in this film. There was something else going on, and that was all revealed in this movie, and I like how they did that. You guys will know what I'm talking about if you've seen both movies. So I really enjoyed Insidious Chapter 2 because of the story writing and because of how many strong connections it made to the first movie and how much it tied into the first movie. So anyway, guys, the next thing I want to get into, next thing I want to talk about really quickly are the performances. Most of the actors from the first Insidious are back for this movie, Chapter 2. Of course, we have Rose Byrne and Patrick Wilson back, and they were both good in the first one. Patrick Wilson, man, he's done a really good job in James Wan's films. He was good in the first Insidious, he was really good in The Conjuring, and he was good again in this. He did a good job, he definitely carries the movie, along with Rose Byrne. And really quickly, I want to bring up Rose Byrne for a second. She is good. But it felt like she just, I don't know, it felt like she wasn't in the movie that much. I don't know why. It was definitely centered more on Patrick Wilson's character and his past, because that definitely played a key role in this movie, his past, and his past with his mother. That was definitely a big part of this movie. But Rose Byrne was still in the movie. She still did a good job. And there are some other actors from the first movie back for Chapter 2. Two actors in particular. Oh man, I love these two guys. They are the two nerdy paranormal investigators. One of them is played by Leigh Whannell. He's the one who wrote this movie, and I believe he wrote the first Insidious. Yeah, he did. And I love those two nerdy paranormal investigators. They're the comic relief for the movie. They were funny as hell in their scenes. I love what they do in this movie and in the first one. They were funny in the first one, but I think they were funnier in this. And I love those two characters. I'm glad they came back for Chapter 2. And also, Elise, the one who was in the first Insidious, she is back for Chapter 2 in kind of like a brief cameo appearance. So that also, I also wanted to mention about that. But that's all I'm going to talk about regarding the cast. All the actors who played their kids, Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne's kids, they are back in this movie. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say about the acting. The acting was all good. The performances were all good. So next up, guys, I want to move on to the movie's rating. Insidious Chapter 2 is rated PG-13. I think this is a very appropriate rating for Chapter 2. The first one was rated PG-13, surprisingly, and this movie was scary, you know? Chapter 2, I think it's rated, you know, PG-13. Yeah, probably rated for terrifying sequences and all that. I think it's an appropriate rating. This movie, if it was rated R, I wouldn't get that at all. There's, you know, some language. There are a few terrifying scenes that would scare the hell out of a little kid for sure. But PG-13 rating is definitely appropriate. The movie isn't as scary as I want it to be. I'll get into that in a second. But it still may make a few people jump, especially if you scare easily. You're probably going to jump a couple times in this movie. So moving on, guys, I think I want to give my personal rating of the film. And I'm going to talk about a couple of other things. I got a couple other things I want to mention. I want to discuss a couple more things that I liked about the movie and a couple more things that I didn't like about the movie, because I basically have two problems with the movie, and that's it. So anyway, guys, I thought hard about this rating, what rating I wanted to give this movie. In the end, I think I'm going to give Insidious Chapter 2 an 8 out of 10. I gave the first film a 9 out of 10. It blew me away. I loved it. Really strong movie. Chapter 2 was good. It was a decent sequel, but it wasn't better than the first Insidious. Not by a long shot. The first Insidious was just so original and just so, it was so much more scarier, you know. This one was good. It was still original, just wasn't as scary. That's one of my biggest problems with the movie. But anyway, 8 out of 10 is still a good rating. I still did enjoy the movie. And the things that I did like about the movie are, I'll get into them right now. As I already mentioned, the story writing. I think the story writing, I love what they did with the story in this movie. James Wan and Leigh Whannell. I think they did a very good job with the story writing. But what really impressed me was how they connected Chapter 2 to Insidious, and they expanded upon the story of the first Insidious. And you guys will know what I'm talking about if you watch both movies, and I love how they did that. They added a couple of things into this movie, a couple of explanations for things that happened in this movie, and I love that about Chapter 2. A lot of things were explained, and I'm like, oh, well, that's why that happened in the first Insidious. This movie opened my eyes to a couple of events that happened in this film, and that's what I love about Chapter 2, and the story writing in general. The story writing was excellent, in my opinion. And also what I love with the story was that it really did keep me on the edge of my seat, because it kept me guessing, and I love when movies do that, and that's what I love about the story writing. The acting, as I said, was all very good. Everyone gave a good performance, and Patrick Wilson, he does a really good job in James Wan's films, and I love that about him. He really does do a good job acting-wise. Same thing with Rose Byrne. Anyway, guys, moving on, and as I said, I love those two comic relief characters, those two nerdy paranormal investigators. I love them. Anyway, guys, the director, of course I gotta talk about James Wan. James Wan is a master of horror, guys. He showed that with Insidious and The Conjuring, and even with the first Saw, and he does a good job again with Chapter 2. He knows how to direct a horror movie. The cinematography was excellent. The movie is very well filmed. It's really not too shaky. There was this one point in the movie where the movie got a little shaky. I was like, what the hell's going on here? It was like towards the end. But other than that, the movie was very well filmed and definitely well directed, and I gotta praise James Wan for that. I'm really impressed by him as a director. He really can do a good job with horror movies. Unfortunately, he's leaving the horror genre. He announced it himself he's not doing any more horror movies. That's a little unfortunate if you ask me, but I still love James Wan as a director. Anyway, guys, moving on. Another thing I really liked about Chapter 2 was the editing. I thought the editing was very well done. The movie was not slow or boring. The pacing was excellent, and I really gotta say, I really enjoyed the editing. Very well edited. There was not one part in this movie where I honestly got bored or felt, oh, this is slow, they gotta wrap this up a bit. I think the movie was very well paced, and it was carried out very well. And I was really entertained by it from beginning to end, especially in that I kept guessing what was going to happen. And I love that about Chapter 2. And the final thing I must add, of course, the thing I loved about the first Insidious is, again, back in this movie, is the music. Whenever a scary scene happens, the music blasts, you know, you got like the piano sounds or like the violin blast, you know. I love how they do that, and they do it again with this one. I think they did it better in this movie, but they did do it again in Chapter 2, and it was still a good job, and the music was great. It really was, and that's why I love some of James Wan's scares. The music really works in his horror films. It really does. And guys, I am next going to briefly mention what I didn't like about the movie. I really only have two problems with the movie. One of the problems is, by one point in the movie, there was like this, they started showing scenes from the first Insidious, and it was like towards the end of the movie. You guys will know what I'm talking about if you watch Chapter 2. By this point in the movie, I started to get a little confused. I'm like, wait, why is this happening? Whoa, I don't get this scene. That only happened to me once in this movie. I'm still trying to wrap my head around why this one scene happened, why they put it in the movie. I don't know, maybe I missed something, but there's this one scene. They showed scenes from the first Insidious, and then they tied the events in Chapter 2 into this one scene in the movie. It was towards the end, and I still am trying to figure out what was going on there. I gotta figure that out, but that was one thing that bothered me. And the only other thing that bothered me with the movie, guys, was that it just wasn't as scary as the first. There were some scares in the movie, but they really didn't scare me as much as the first one did. I mean, the first one was just so creepy, you know. You had all the right moments, the right music, just at just the right scare, you know, and it just worked out so well. And it's kind of creepy in this movie. I only jumped once in this movie, to be honest. I was a little bit let down with mostly the fact that it just wasn't as scary as the first one. Because the first one will always be one of the most terrifying movies I've ever seen. It really, really did scare me. This one, not so much, and that's honestly one of the biggest problems with the movie. That's why I give it an 8 out of 10. It was good, but it just didn't really scare me. So there you have it, guys. There's my review for Insidious Chapter 2. Guys, if you did see the Chapter 2, what did you think of it? Let me know down below in the comments. And also, what did you think of the first one? Did you think it was really, really scary? I loved it. So anyway, guys, yeah, 8 out of 10 for me. It was good, not great, and not as good as the first one. So I would recommend you guys see it, but maybe catch it on a cheap night or pay, maybe pay matinee price. I wouldn't pay, full price for the movie. It depends how big a fan you are, though. So anyway, guys, yeah, that's it for my Insidious Chapter 2 movie review. Let me know what you thought of the movie down below in the comments. And as for a buy on Blu-ray for me, I don't think I would get it on Blu-ray right away. Maybe in the future. But anyway, guys, that's it. Thank you very much for watching my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Bye.